Every summer, I go hunting for plants. Dillweed, grasses, wildflowers, anything with a great shape. But here's the thing. I only have a few months to gather them, and I want to enjoy them in my art all winter long. That's where this little trick comes in. This is a tissue print. It's light, it's delicate, and it captures botanical details better than any other surface I've tried. And the best part? In the middle of winter, these prints make my studio feel like summer again. In this video, I'll show you exactly how to make them, step by step on the gel plate, and I'll share a quick peek at how I store them, plus a couple of ideas for using them in your mixed media projects. So today you'll need a gel plate. I'm using my great big one today. This is 16 by 20. It's made by Jelly Arts, and I've used it a lot. But I would like to get some really large botanical tissues for use over the winter. So I'm going to go with the big boy today. Generally speaking, I use golden open paint, either in the jar or the tube. And I use a fair bit of it, so I buy it in the larger sizes. But I find that this paint will give me more prints and a bit more flexibility with how I actually operate. Of course, you'll need your botanical material, and we'll need some tissue. So this is the Spectra Art tissue. It's in white, and I can get it either through an art store or also on Amazon. I go through quite a lot of this, so I buy it in a larger quantity. Now these sheets are 20 inches by 30 inches. So for this size plate, I just cut the sheets in half. That gives me 15 by 20, which works really well on this plate. You'll also need a brayer, and then of course something to clean up your plate with. I just use water and paper towels. First, I'll go out and harvest the plants. So in this case, some dill that I planted in the spring. Now, if it's bulky, I like to flatten it under glass or any other kind of weight for a little bit. And how long depends on the plant. Some plants flatten pretty quickly, other ones take a little bit more persuading. I like to use fairly dark colors for these particular prints, and I like to make them either cool or warm. So I'll start off with something like a Payne's Gray, and then I'll either put a blue in it, or perhaps I'll put something like a transparent red iron oxide in it. I'm going to start off with a little Payne's Gray and anthraquinone blue. Now the dark colors are my preference for this type of tissue print, but you could really use any color that you prefer. It's nice having the golden open paint when you are rolling up such a big plate, because you really don't have to worry about rushing because of drying. It's going to stay open and workable for quite a while. There we go. Last few rolls of the roller I like to make a little bit lighter. So I'm going to arrange the botanicals. And sometimes I'm looking for, kind of a design that will work well as one single piece of tissue. But I've also got the option to separate out plants. There we go. Now some of these might be a little bit dense, so I may just pull out a few bits of those, and that'll give me a little bit more of an airy feeling. Yeah, there we go. Next, I'll pull what's called the negative print. So for the first one, which will be very, very dark, I'm just going to use copy paper. This is really large copy paper. This copy paper is, I believe, tabloid size. So 11 by 17, I think. Basically, I just want to get some of that background off. I'll use a clean brayer to kind of push it in. Oh, I can smell that dill. That's just gorgeous. It's one of the nice things about printing with herbs. Now this would be a very dark print, which might not be that useful in my collage work. But what I do find is that I can make some very interesting stencils based on these dark negative prints. You can do it by hand, just basically using them as a reference. Or I can also scan them and convert them on the computer to something that I can cut with my Cricut cutter. And I have a video on that I'll link in the description. And if you're interested in that, you can watch that. Okay, so, oh, look at that blue that's coming up. Oh yeah, there's some, whoops, gonna get it all sticky. That's the upper portion with some beautiful seed heads. And this is the lower portion that has more of the little feathery bits. Now I keep pulling negative prints, but I'll do it this time with tissue until I get pretty much all of the background ink, what we call the plate ink, off. And these tissues, there might be 3 to 5 of these that I'll end up printing to get all that paint off. But I find these ones very useful in collage. I like the shapes that they make around the plants. And I'll show you an example later in the video of how I've worked with those ones in my collage work. There we go. Now this is where you have to have a little tissue paper that's a little better than dollar store. Dollar store tissue will work, but it's a little difficult to handle, and you may find that it tears a bit more easily. Now, if you don't live in North America, where the Spectra art tissue is available, you can use the wet strength tissue from Carnival. It works very well as well. It's just a little expensive in North America. So I can still see plate ink in the background. So I'll do another pull. Some people call these clean-offs, and it's perfectly accurate. You're basically cleaning off the plate in preparation for taking the main event, the positive print. But because I like these so much in my collage, I don't mind taking the time to print them at all. I love the lacy patterns of this dill. I did not have enough of this last year. I only had a couple of plants, and I printed them, and I used everything that I had last winter. I just enjoyed the shapes so much. There we go. So that's including the very first one on printer paper. That's clean off number 3. As there's less and less paint in the background, I really like to push the brayer into the tissue, because these little silhouettes with very little background and just the silhouette of the plant, I just love those in my work. There we go. Oh yeah. So this is very similar to the ones that I'll show you later in the video that I've used. So that was a total of 4 negative prints or clean-off sheets. So now I'm going to very gently lift the dill weed up, and I'm going to place it right, or jammy side up, on my work surface. Now I can see that I'm getting quite a lot of seeds left behind. There's quite a lot of little bits in here. And if I leave those, they'll create white voids in the darker image. And, you know, that's not a totally bad thing. That can look fine. And it's going to take forever to try to pick all those little seeds off. So I think I will leave them on and just go ahead to the positive print. See, even though there's some of the paint is blocked from getting through to the piece of paper, you can still see where it's making very interesting shapes. And by the way, that's how I decide which plants I want to use in a collage. I hope that I will have quite a few to select from that I've printed over the summer. And it's kind of based on what kind of shapes I want. I do kind of like these dills because they look like so many different flowers. You know, they could be just about anything you want. There we go. There. So that's a beautiful positive print. So I will use those in conjunction with the negative prints in my collage work. Oop. A few little seeds. Now, if there was enough paint left on here, enough dark paint, I could get a second positive print out of that, which would still have a lot of detail. But in this case, I think there's just too much debris on the plate. So I'm going to have to take a moment and clean it. I just clean it by spraying it with water and then wiping it down with paper towels. When there's this many seed heads and things like that, sometimes that can take a while to get those all up. From here, you go ahead and repeat the process with different colors, or you can swap out your plant material to create a variety of prints. This is carbon black, which really gives me a good intense print. And I'm going to mix it with a little bit of dioxazine purple. Purple works really well into my color schemes. So I'll just hope that that's the same this winter as it was last winter. Sometimes my color schemes tend to make a bit of a jump shift. Kind of like it after I've used a plate for a print or two, because what's left on the plate and also what's left on the brayer sort of adjusts what I get on the next print. Whoops. There we go. Okay, now these go down the other way because I've already used them once. Knock off a few more of those seeds. There's the lower sheet. and the upper sheet. How many clean-off sheets you'll need will depend on how much paint you put on the plate in the first place. See, that's still very dense. This is starting to get interesting here on the plate. There's some quite interesting patterns being picked up from the previous tissues. Every time you put anything on the plate, whether it's some kind of tool or a mask like this dillweed, or whether it's the kind of paper. You know, you put a piece of paper on the plate and lift it up. Everything's always going to alter what's underneath for the next print. The little crinkles in this tissue will leave it a very interesting pattern for the next tissue. Last time we used 4 clean-off sheets. I'm going to make a prediction it's going to be higher for this one. It could be as high as a total of 6. Whoops. That's very interesting. We're starting to get down to less material or less paint on the plate in the background. Now this one might be the just perfect one that I like for the backgrounds of my collages, where there's just a lovely silhouette of the plant. You can see the ink still on both sides of each of the stems and around the flowers. And if there's not too much in the background, this can be very useful collage paper. Oh yeah. This is definitely one that I could use in the backgrounds. And I think I've got enough of the background off. So I'm just going to lift these. Now this time you'll see it's really dark underneath these plants, and that's good. Sometimes I want a really bold, striking image, and other times, you know, something softer. Now there'll be less debris this time, because so much of it came off with the last print. So that's kind of handy. That'll change the shapes of these little seed heads a little bit. It's all good. I like to have variety. Then I can choose which type of thing I'm going for, and what if I've got enough different ones, that gives me a nice selection over the winter. Oh yes, this is really quite dark. So a really good one to use. I could take a piece out of it or use a whole thing to create center of interest and some nice contrast. Now I think there's still enough stuff left here to pull a second positive. That carbon black and the dioxazine purple really stick around. So often there'll be an extra positive print from them. It'll still have lots of lovely detail and maybe a softness or subtleness about it, which might be really appropriate for a certain work. You just have to be gentle pulling these off. Any tissue will rip if you yank it hard enough. There we go. Oh, look at that. That's just lovely. So this is a roll-up of transparent red iron oxide and dioxazine purple. It will give me something quite different than the other roll-ups. I like having some variety in color and in shapes. Transparent red iron oxide isn't much of a laster. It'll be gone off the plate pretty quickly, but the dioxazine purple will hang around for a bit. And if you're interested in learning more about how colors work on the jelly plate, rolling techniques, how to create a gradient, creating your own stencils, masks, tool textures, using plants, I have an online course that's coming up in the winter, starting for the first time in the winter of 2026. It'll be starting in January. I'll be opening registration for that probably in November. So if you're interested in that course, there's lots more information on my website. And you can sign up for the newsletter to stay current with any developments and to be let you know when registration opens. I do like the little splotches all the purple makes. And you can see that one first brayer mark that I made there that was in the black. And that's given it some interesting texture as well. Now, once these plants have acrylic on them, and then they dry, the paint dries overnight, quite often I can keep using these plants for a while. Dill isn't the most sturdy. I would think that title goes to the grasses, but because these little fine things will dry up. But I can get quite a lot of use out of the same pieces. There we go. So not much paint left in that background. I think I'll do one more clean off sheet just for good measure. I love the fact that with the tissue you can see what's happening. You can see what paint is coming up. Oh, look at that. That's quite interesting. Okay, now I'll just pick these up, and of course a lot of the seeds came with that one. That was to be expected. So this is going to be a less graphic one than the black, but it'll still have plenty of contrast. Oh, a few wrinkles. Some days I get lucky, other days not so much. But it all works out. I find when you're collaging them, you often are not worried about the wrinkles in the paper or the creases. It's more just about the overall appearance of the areas. And give it a real good burnish around those lumpy seeds. I was hoping to pick this dill before the seeds had dried too much, but we were away last week, so I missed probably the perfect time while we were away. But I don't mind. It's just a bit of cleanup. Oh, I kind of like where that black came through. And then lots of the transparent red iron oxide, and then just little moments of the dioxazine purple. Oh yeah, look at that. I don't want to put it down on the plate or it will stick. That gives you a good idea of what that looks like. One of the nice things about tissue prints is that they're incredibly easy to store because they're so thin. For larger sheets, I just fold them in half gently. Any creases will disappear once they've been glued down in a collage. I like to organize mine by plant type. Dill with dill, baby breath together, because when I start a collage, the first thing I usually think about is the kinds of shapes I'm going to want to use. I always print multiples. Having a few variations of the same plant means I can play with different compositions without worrying about running out of a particular favorite botanical. Here's how I like to use these tissue prints once winter rolls around. I usually start by building a background with a bit of paint and some accent papers. Then I'll bring in one of the negative prints. It's a great way to tie different shapes together across the canvas. From there, I'll use paint to adjust and emphasize certain areas, adding more movement or contrast where I need it. Finally, I'll add pieces of a positive print to create a focal point and bring balance to the composition. And one of the best parts is how the tissue itself almost disappears into the surface, leaving behind just the delicate plant shapes. Is the reason I like to build a big stash of tissue prints during the summer, because in the middle of winter, I'll still have all of these botanicals at my fingertips. So that's why tissue prints are such a game changer. They're simple to make on the gel plate, they store easily, and they bring those beautiful summer botanicals back into my artwork all winter long. If you've never tried them before, I really encourage you to make yourself a little stash. They'll give you so much flexibility when you're creating, and it's a lovely way to keep the seasons alive in your studio. If you'd like to dive deeper into gel printing, I'll be running my online course in January. It's 6 weeks of step-by-step modules with weekly live question and answer sessions, followed by 4 weeks of mentoring and feedback on your work. If that sounds interesting, make sure you're on my newsletter list so you don't miss the details. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this helpful, give it a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.